You hear the stories every few months. A name on the news, a gas station somewhere, a number so large it stops making sense, and for half a second you picture yourself in it before you scroll past. You have also heard what comes after. The winners who are broke inside 3 years. The ones who disappeared. The ones who ended up back where they started, except now with people in their life who remember the number. You never think it is going to be you. You are standing under the humming fluorescent light at the pump on a Tuesday night when your card does not go through for a $2 coffee inside. Not the first time this month. You put it back in your wallet without making eye contact with the woman behind the counter and you walk out to finish pumping. The tank reads a quarter full. You decide it is enough to get through the week. The ticket is in your jacket pocket. You bought it 3 days ago on a whim. $6. You check the numbers while the pump is running. Your hand goes completely still. You check them again, then a third time, and then you stand there under the buzzing light with the pump handle still in your hand and you do not make a sound. Not because you are composed, because the part of your brain that makes sounds has stopped working. A man in a red truck pulls up behind you. The scanner inside the store beeps. Somebody laughs at something and none of it reaches you. $600 million. The sign has had that number on it for 11 days. You drove past it on the way to work every morning and thought about it for about 4 seconds each time. You joked about it last week with a coworker named Marcus who sits 2 desks over and complains about his rent the same way you do. You bought one ticket because $6 felt like a fair price for 2 days of imagining a different version of Tuesday. The imagining is over. Here is what you need to understand right now. What happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether this changes your life or destroys it. The reason almost nobody explains what the winning lottery winner's first 72 hours actually look like is because the people who got it right never told anyone. They just disappeared quietly into a version of their life that looked almost exactly the same from the outside. You are about to find out exactly what they did, and there is a part of this story that comes later, a cost that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with the people sitting across from you at dinner, that most versions of this never reach. Stay with it. You do not sign the ticket. This is the first decision. It sounds small. It is not. Signing the back makes you the public, permanent legal owner of whatever number is on it. The moment it is signed and in someone else's hands, even briefly, your name attaches to a figure that reaches every person you have ever met within 24 hours. You fold it once. You put it in the inside pocket of your jacket, the one with the button, the one you never use. You get back in the car. You do not turn the key right away. You sit in the dark with your hands on the wheel and you let the number land, 600 million. Something around 166 million after lump sum and federal taxes. You do not know that second number yet. You are just sitting with the first one, trying to feel its actual weight and finding that you cannot. It is too large to feel real. It just sits there, enormous and quiet, while a woman in a gray coat walks out of the store with a paper bag and nobody looks at your car twice. You drive home. Same route. Same lights. You pass the dent in your mailbox from last February. Your porch light is on. Everything is exactly where it always is on a Tuesday night. You go inside. You say hello. You do not say the number. Not tonight. Before you sleep, you do 3 things. You photograph the ticket from both sides and store the photograph behind a password you have never used for anything else. You put the physical ticket inside 2 plastic sleeves inside a book on the bedroom shelf, the one nobody borrows. You write 4 sentences on a piece of paper and put it in the same book. The attorney you are looking for is not a general estate planner, not a friend who passed the bar. A lottery attorney, someone who has sat across from a person holding exactly what you are holding and walked them through a sequence most people in your position never find out exists. You find one by morning. You call before you do anything else. Before you tell your partner. Before you call your bank. Before you run a single search on any device connected to your name. The attorney's name is Daniel Marsh. His office is on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. The receptionist does not ask why you are there, which tells you Daniel gets visitors like you more often than his website suggests. He shakes your hand once, sits you down across a desk that has nothing on it except a legal pad, and says the sentence that has been sitting in your chest since the pump. First thing, do not sign the back of that ticket. You look down at your jacket pocket. You almost had 3 times this week. He explains the claim form. Near the bottom, in type small enough that you would have missed it, there is a box. Prize winner elects to remain anonymous. In states that allow it, this box keeps your name off the public record permanently, but it comes with one condition. You must take the lump sum. The annuity pays out over 29 years but releases the winner's name after 30 days regardless of state law. Lump sum and anonymity, or your name goes public and stays there. He turns his legal pad around and writes a name on it. That is the name of the trust that will claim this prize. Not your name. Something forgettable. Something like Westfield Asset Group or Blue Ridge Family Trust. The trust files the claim. The trust name appears on the public record. Yours does not appear anywhere. He tells you the trust needs to be drafted before the claim is filed. 4 days. He tells you the whole thing in the same calm voice someone uses when they have said it 50 times before, watching your face for the moment it lands. It lands around the part where he says every additional person who knows is a point of failure. He asks who else knows. Nobody, you tell him. He writes that down like it is the best number you could have given him. Now comes the number that changes the number. The sign said 600 million. That is not what lands in the account. You take the lump sum. On a $600 million jackpot, the cash value sits around $264 million. Daniel connects you to a CPA named Sandra Osi in the first week. Sandra is the kind of person who does not rush anything and does not soften anything. In your first real meeting, she opens a laptop, turns it toward you, and walks you through the math the way a doctor walks you through a scan. Specific, unhurried. The IRS takes 24% immediately, she says. The moment the trust files the claim, more than $63 million is gone before you have spent a single dollar. But that is not the real number, she says. That is the withholding deposit. A win this size lands you in the top federal bracket, 37%. On $264 million, the total federal tax liability comes to just under $98 million. The difference between what was withheld and what you actually owe comes due at filing. She lets you sit with that for a moment. After everything the IRS takes, you are looking at approximately $166 million inside the trust. She tells you the small mercy in the number. If you are in one of the 9 states with no income tax, Texas, Florida, and 7 others, you keep everything the federal government does not take. New York or California, you lose another 8 to 13% on top. The state where you bought the ticket and the state where you live can both make a claim. She and Daniel work through that together before anything moves. $166 million. She says the goal is to make sure the money is working before you have made a single visible decision with it. She says the goal is for your life to look exactly the same for the next 6 months. She asks if you can do that. You think about Marcus at the desk 2 seats over. You think about the dent in the mailbox. You tell her you can do that. You go back to work on Monday. You sit at your desk. You answer emails. Marcus tells you about his weekend and you listen and respond the way a person responds when they have the same problems as the person talking to them. You check the lunch prices the same way you always check them. You reheat coffee that has gone cold. And underneath all of it, you are doing arithmetic nobody around you can see. $166 million in a trust with a name that means nothing to anyone who does not know where to look. You are sitting in this chair with that number behind you like a door you are not allowed to open yet. The door is not going anywhere. You just have to act like it is not there. That night, Sandra walks you through the first real move, a substantial position in a broad market index fund inside the trust's brokerage account. The instrument actual financial advisors recommend in almost every real wealth-building conversation. Boring, invisible, compounding quietly in the background for 20 years without asking anything of you. You stare at the confirmation screen for a long moment. No ribbon cutting, no number counting up in real time, just a transaction, working, without needing your attention. It is the least exciting thing you have done all week. It is also the only one that will still be working in 20 years. The second move Sandra calls boring on purpose. Commercial real estate. Not a house, not anything visible. A position in a portfolio of self-storage facilities and small industrial units registered to a separate LLC that traces back to the trust. These collect rent from businesses every single month regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of whether anyone on earth knows you exist. The index fund builds the principal. The real estate pays you while it builds. You live off income from assets that are themselves growing. None of it, not a single document, has your name on it. There is something coming, though, that has nothing to do with documents. Your partner's name is Nina. She finds out on a Thursday evening. Not because you made a mistake, because a browser you forgot was still logged in auto-filled your email on the shared laptop when she was trying to book a flight for her sister. The wrong tab loaded. A charter service invoice. 4 words before the screen changes. You are still holding the mail when you see her face. She is not angry. She has the expression of someone doing math they did not choose to do and arriving at a place they do not want to be. She looks at the screen, then at you. "What is this?" she says. And it is not a question. You set the mail down slowly. You tell her the smallest true thing you can hold together. You won something. You have been working with people to handle it the right way. You were scared that saying it out loud before you understood it would change something between you before either of you was ready. She does not say anything. Then she asks how long. 7 months, you tell her. You watch that land on her with the same weight the tax number had on you. Not the size of what you won, the length of what you held back. 7 months of sitting across the table at dinner, 7 months of saying fine, 7 months of Tuesday nights. She says she has been eating leftovers from the same 2 restaurants with you for 7 months. Not quite a laugh. Not quite the other thing. You do not defend it. There is no version of the defense that does not sound exactly like what it was. You kept weighing her against the secret and the secret kept winning. You told yourself you were protecting her. Sitting across from her now, it just looks like distance dressed up as care. She goes to bed early. You sit at the kitchen table alone. The trust is in place. The money is allocated. Everything Daniel and Sandra built is working exactly as designed. And the version of you that used to say everything to the person in that bedroom is somewhere on the other side of 7 months of silence. This is the cost no attorney quotes you. This is the number that does not appear on any of the statements. Here is what the life looks like 6 months after that Thursday. A trust with a name nobody associates with you. A market position compounding in the background without your attention. Commercial properties generating income every month from businesses that need space. A donor-advised fund giving quietly to 2 things you actually care about, without your name on a single document anyone will ever read. Nina knows the full number now. That happened 3 weeks after the Thursday. She listened to the whole structure without interrupting. When you finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked if you were happy. You told her the anxiety you had carried for most of your adult life, the specific low hum of what if something goes wrong financially, was gone. Not quieter, gone. And you were still figuring out what it felt like to live without it. She said that sounded like a start. You are still working on what comes after the start. Here is what you actually own. A trust nobody connects to you. A market position working every day without your involvement. Income from real assets that grow in value over time. And a life that looks, from the outside, almost identical to the one before. Same neighborhood, same desk, same Tuesday nights. What has changed is invisible from every direction except inside. The specific weight you carried for most of your adult life is not there when you open your eyes in the morning. The difference between wealth that announces itself the moment it arrives and wealth that compounds in the dark for 20 years without ever needing to explain where it came from. The people who get this right are never the ones you hear about. You are starting to understand why. This is what actually happens when you win $600 million and tell no one. Not the fantasy version of what happens to a lottery winner. Not the cautionary story. The third thing. The quiet thing. The one that never makes the news because it was built specifically to avoid it. You build the structure before you claim the prize. You let the trust carry the public record. You let Daniel run the sequence. You let Sandra allocate the asset. You let the market and the commercial properties do the work. You go back to work on Monday. You reheat coffee. You say hello at dinner. And you carry the number every day in a way nobody around you can see. Not as a burden, as a foundation. The ticket was the moment. The 72 hours was the decision. Everything after that is the life you built on the other side of the choice to stay quiet long enough to get it right. Nina still does not know about the watch in the glove box. You keep telling yourself there is time for that conversation. There is always a next Tuesday.